to a pretty much mostly white school, and a lot of times other students of color, maybe it was Asian kids or black kids or Hispanic kids, they always stay together.
Especially on campus, because I feel like everybody groups to who they feel comfortable with. I personally hang out mostly with Africans. I try to break that, but it just it just happens. You don't even notice until someone points it out.
So if a student is involved in football, they tend to hang around with other kids that play football, whether they're black, Hispanic, Asian, white. If they're in AP classes and band.
Do you think Americans are as colorblind as we think?
Colorblind is just the phrase itself makes sense to me because we see people as different races. Like if I went missing today, you'd say black female 21-year-old went missing. You know, you will see what color I am.
I don't think it's a good thing to say colorblind. You should recognize color. We are who we are. And for someone to say I'm colorblind, really? You see my color. I see your color.
How high up do you think we can find this kind of clan mentality, this kind of discrimination?
Well, I think it's as I was mentioning as I came in, a book, and I wish I could remember the author was called America's Original Sin, Slavery, Racism, and the Jamestown Colony, saying that really this country was founded on a racist presupposition. So it's very hard for us to even become aware of it.
So during the 80s and early 90s, what was taking place on the streets throughout the country were a lot of people that were actually selling drugs, getting arrested for drugs, and doing time, considerable amount of time, because during those years we had a minimum mandatory sentencing guideline that if you got caught selling drugs in school zones, you got caught selling so much quantity of drugs, you would go away for an X amount of time. And that filled our prisons. I think if you look in the 80s, the mid-80s, I was fortunate enough to be, or unfortunate enough to be in a drug unit in the city of Lowell when the crack epidemic hit the cities throughout the country, not just this region, but the country, clearly distorting life and causing havoc for families, causing a lot of health issues.
Your sentence is higher than if you're using cocaine. It was like a ratio of like 20 grams to 90 grams. So it's crazy. And obviously we know minorities end up using crack because it's cheaper and more available to them.
The reason I read it, I have a colleague at Harvard. She runs the criminal justice program there. And I brought a leadership school that we partner up with the university here each year. And this year we went down and Christine Cole, who's the director down there, spoke to us and she recommended this book. So I read it, and it keeps you open-minded. It makes you never want to go back where we used to be and to be cognizant of it.
The statistics, and because I am aware of Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, we have in the United States 5% of the world's population. And of this, the United States has 25% of the incarcerated individuals. And of that 25%, 69 to 70% are young black males.
And, you know, reading, Jim Alexander's book, it's very biased, clearly, because when they talked about African Americans, I can tell you in the city of Lowell, growing up in the most violent time in the 80s there, the majority individuals that we were dealing with were Latinos. And why, if you really want to look into this as the reason why, just don't keep on blaming the system. Let's look and see why, may it be African Americans, whites, or Latinos, why were they getting arrested at those numbers? Why were they selling the drugs? Why were they addicts at that time in their life?
The media barely covers anything that's important. So I feel like people don't know that because they don't watch the news either or do their own research. People depend on word of mouth, and if you sit with your friends, you're not going to talk about incarcerations or like how full the prisons are.
Is the fact that it's hushed. I mean, like, why? I mean, they exist. Those rates of incarceration of young black males is real, and I believe that it's they're not given a voice. They're not given proper representation.
What makes good first steps for solving these issues?
Want to be looking at all the facts and statistics, and maybe changing how their whole policy of arresting people. Maybe like how many drugs, how much you have to have on you to be arrested, what is criminal. I know even marijuana in some states is now becoming legalized, so it's very odd to be like, arrested here, but not here for the same thing.
Well, definitely education is key for everything. So once ignorance is not bliss once you're educated. So once we educate the public about these situations, these issues, I feel like we could all work towards like a common goal to get rid of these issues.
Continue to keep teaching, to tell everybody that's out there, okay, great, we have a black president. That's not solving our issues. That's not solving these concerns. And it's a crime, the fact that the unbalance of a black male versus a white male, and how they're proceeded through court, of their punishments. It's not enough. Oprah Winfrey, no, wow, it's not enough.
Well, it's really hard to put everything on the part of the school system. School systems have a role to play, but it's really hard if a kid is getting a message from his parents at home that this is acceptable. It's really hard just for a teacher who has the child 5 or 6 hours a day to change that child's attitude.
I think the biggest thing that I take away from it is you always have to be vigilant of it. You always got to look at that. You have to look at data. Data doesn't lie. When you look at our data in the city, what do you think our majority arrests are? White males. Who do we give the most speeding tickets to? White females. That's our data. So when we look at that, we direct that to schools. Our SROs go into schools and talk about those issues.
Addressing poverty, for example, education is the solution in many respects, and opportunities that come from that. I mean, we have two unbelievable agreements, really, with both Fitchburg State University and Mount Wachusett Community College, and they really are centered around opportunities for students to further educate themselves beyond high school.